Have you ever heard the saying, it's the little things that make a big difference? Well, in the skies over Europe during World War II, a seemingly insignificant invention, Majau paper, completely changed the course of the air war. It was a game changer that left the mighty German Luftwaffe reeling and saved thousands of lives. And the wildest part, it was an idea that experts initially dismissed as completely unfeasible. Is cheeky around because this is the incredible story of the paper drop tank. Let's set the scene. It's 1943. The Allies are launching massive bombing raids deep into Germany, trying to cripple the Nazi war machine. But there's a huge problem. The bombers, mighty fortresses, like the B-17s, are flying without fighter protection for a large part of their journey. Why? Because the fighters, like the P-47 Thunderbolt and the early P-51 Mustangs, just didn't have the gas to go all the way to targets like Berlin and back. Imagine being a young bomber crewman. You're flying in a tight formation, thousands of feet up, the air freezing cold. For the first part of the flight, you've got your little friends, the escort fighters, weaving around you, a comforting sight. But then you reach a point, the turnaround point, where the fighter pilots dip their wings in a sad farewell. They're out of fuel. They have to go home. From that moment on, you're on your own, flying into the heart of the Third Reich, where the Luftwaffe is waiting. The German pilots were smart. They knew exactly where this turnaround point was. They would patiently wait, conserving their fuel and ammunition until the Allied fighters had departed. Then they would strike. Formations of Messerschmitt Bf-19s and Focke-Wulf 190s would tear into the unprotected bomber streams. The results were devastating. The sky would fill with smoke, fire, and falling aircraft. Losses were catastrophic. On some missions, the U.S. 8th Air Force was losing up to 20% of its bombers. That's 1 in 5 planes not coming back. The crews called it Black Week. The strategic bombing campaign was on the verge of failure. The human cost was staggering, and morale was plummeting. The Allies desperately needed a solution. The obvious answer was to give the fighters more fuel. The concept of drop tanks wasn't new. These were external fuel tanks that could be jettisoned once empty, reducing weight and drag. Early drop tanks were made of metal, usually aluminum. They worked, but they had a massive drawback. Aluminum was a critical strategic material. It was needed to build the planes themselves. Manufacturing enough metal drop tanks for every single fighter on every single mission was simply not sustainable. There wasn't enough aluminum to go around. It was a logistical nightmare. The problem seemed unsolvable. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The British, facing the same material shortages, had been experimenting with alternative materials. They came up with a radical, almost absurd idea. What if they made the tanks out of paper? Not just any paper, of course. It was a specially treated, impregnated craft paper, bonded together with a waterproof animal-based glue. Think of it like an incredibly strong, fuel-proof version of papier, MC. The design consisted of 3 sections: a nose, a tail, and a central cylinder, all pressed and glued together. It was cheap, it was lightweight, and most importantly, it didn't use any precious aluminum. When the British first presented this idea to American engineers, the reaction was, to put it mildly, skeptical. Unfeasible, they called it. A paper fuel tank. It sounded flimsy, ridiculous. How could something made of paper and glue possibly hold volatile high-octane aviation fuel while being buffeted by extreme temperatures and airspeeds of hundreds of miles per hour? It seemed destined to leak, disintegrate, or just plain fall apart. But desperation is the mother of invention. With bomber losses mounting and no other viable solution in sight, the Americans decided to give it a try. The British design was refined and put into mass production. Factories that once made things like paper cups and containers were repurposed to churn out these disposable tanks. The result was a 108-gallon paper drop tank that could be fitted to the wings of the P-51 Mustang. And this is where everything changed. The P-51 Mustang was already a phenomenal aircraft, but it had always been held back by its limited range. With these new paper drop tanks, its combat radius was suddenly more than doubled. It went from about 475 miles to a staggering 850 miles. Suddenly, the entire map of the air war was redrawn. Berlin, once a fortress deep within Germany, was now within reach of the escort fighters. The Germans were caught completely by surprise. Imagine being a Luftwaffe pilot, waiting for the American fighters to turn back at their usual spot. You're getting ready to pounce on the helpless bombers. But this time the fighters don't turn back. They keep coming. P-51 Mustangs, gleaming in the sun, armed to the teeth, and now with enough fuel to escort the bombers all the way to Berlin, engage the German defenders, and then fly all the way home. The psychological impact on the German pilots was devastating. Their safe hunting grounds were gone. The free lunch was over. Now, they had to fight their way through swarms of superior Allied fighters just to get a shot at the bombers. The legendary Luftwaffe ace, Adolf Galland, famously said the day I saw Mustangs over Berlin, I knew the jig was up. Understood in that single moment that Germany had lost control of its own skies. The effect on bomber losses was immediate and dramatic. The loss HE, which had been as high as 20%, plummeted to under 2%. The paper drop tank didn't just save planes, it saved lives. It's estimated that this simple innovation saved the lives of around 8,000 Allied aircrew members. These were 8,000 sons, husbands, and fathers who came home because of a fuel tank made of paper and glue. It's no exaggeration to say this was a war-winning technology. The Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, later called the drop tank the single most important tactical improvement of the entire air war in Europe. It allowed the strategic bombing campaign to continue, relentlessly pounding German industry, oil production, and infrastructure, ultimately crippling their ability to wage war. And it all came from an idea that was initially dismissed as impossible. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most elegant solutions are the simplest ones. It was unto death ray or a super weapon that broke the back of the Luftwaffe's defense. It was a cheap, disposable, paper tank. It's a testament to ingenuity, perseverance, and the willingness to try an idea that everyone else thinks is crazy. The humble paper drop tank truly is one of the great unsung heroes of the Second World War. So, the next time you think an idea is too simple or too strange to work, remember the story of the paper tank that helped to win a war. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden history of technology and warfare. Let me know in the comments what other unsung innovations you'd like to hear about. See you in the next video.